Have you ever wondered what would happen if Jesus Christ and Vladimir Putin sat down for a face-to-face conversation? What would the greatest spiritual leader in history say to the leader of one of the most powerful nations on earth? Would he confront him, forgive him, or perhaps offer him divine counsel? Today we'll explore this profound reflection based on the teachings of Jesus Christ. Regardless of your political or religious views, this discussion may provide valuable insights about power, forgiveness, and responsibility. So stay with us until the end, because today we're going to see, what would Jesus say to Vladimir Putin? It was a seemingly ordinary day at the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin sat in his presidential office, surrounded by the usual luxury and grandeur. The dark desk was filled with important documents. Russian flags adorned the walls, and historical portraits reflected his position of power and leadership. As he carefully reviewed the papers in front of him, an unexpected breeze gently stirred, softly moving the heavy curtains and scattering papers on the desk. Putin slowly raised his eyes, intrigued by the phenomenon, as all windows were firmly closed. A gentle light began filling the room, gradually intensifying until it became both brilliant and inviting. At the center of this radiance, a calm and peaceful figure emerged, Jesus Christ. Clothed in a simple white robe, his expression conveyed profound serenity and wisdom. Visibly astonished, Putin rose slowly from his chair, his cautious and questioning eyes fixed upon this unexpected visitor. For several moments, neither of them spoke. The silence filled the space, heavy with anticipation and curiosity. Finally, in a calm and welcoming voice, Jesus broke the silence. "Peace be with you." Still unsure of what was happening, Putin asked firmly and directly, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" With a deep, gentle gaze, Jesus calmly replied, "I've come to talk with you about things that truly matter, about real power, responsibility, and peace." Putin remained in absolute silence, realizing that for the first time in many years, there were no guards or assistants inside his office. He was entirely alone, facing this unusual visitor. He felt an unfamiliar blend of vulnerability and curiosity. Slowly, almost in slow motion, he stepped backward toward his presidential chair and sat down very carefully, as if afraid any sudden movement might shatter this extraordinary moment. His gaze stayed fixed, intense, and watchful upon the calm, peaceful figure standing before him. As the figure remained still, surrounded by a gentle, welcoming light, something within Putin began to shift. In a striking moment of clarity, the Russian leader realized exactly who stood before him. An unexpected wave of emotions surged through his body. "It's impossible," he thought, experiencing a chill in his stomach and a tightness in his chest, as he recognized in that deep, compassionate gaze the unmistakable presence of Jesus Christ. Jesus stood before him, maintaining a warm and composed posture. His eyes conveyed absolute assurance, gently observing every breath, every gesture, every subtle movement of the Russian leader. The profound silence that filled the room further heightened the emotional impact of this unique encounter, making it abundantly clear that this conversation had the potential to transform everything Putin had ever known about power and leadership. "You govern millions of people and hold power over vast territories," Jesus said clearly and compassionately. "But have you ever stopped to consider the true purpose behind all this?" Putin remained silent for a moment, visibly uncomfortable with the unexpected question. Jesus continued gently, "For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet lose his own soul?" Matthew 16:26. Putin briefly diverted his gaze to the documents on his desk, reflecting deeply. These words were simple, yet they profoundly impacted the leader, who was accustomed to thinking in strategic and political terms. "The power you seek is not found in authority or dominance over territories and armies," Jesus continued, his voice firm yet compassionate. "True power lies in your ability to love, serve, and protect those entrusted to you." Putin furrowed his brow, still silent, slowly absorbing these words, unusual for a political leader. Jesus stepped forward, gently approaching with a voice even closer and more personal. "You see, whoever wants to be great among you must become the servant of all." Mark 10:44. Now, visibly unsettled, Putin raised his face again, meeting Jesus' kind eyes, and questioned, "But how can I govern by serving? How can I maintain order and authority without strength?" Jesus smiled gently, responding with wisdom. Real power isn't about brute force, but about influencing hearts by leading with compassion and justice. Those who rule through fear may obtain temporary obedience, but those who govern with love and responsibility transform lives forever. The words lingered heavily in the air, visibly affecting Putin, who showed clear signs of deep internal conflict. Jesus walked toward a nearby window, gazing contemplatively outward. Putin followed his gaze and suddenly saw vivid scenes begin appearing on the window, as if it were a magical screen. He sees intense images of soldiers in battle, destroyed cities, and civilians suffering the consequences of war. Putin feels the weight of these images, and his expression hardens. Is this the legacy you want to leave behind? Jesus calmly asks, without taking his eyes off the window. Putin hesitates, feeling an unusual tightness in his chest. Jesus continues, "I once said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Matthew 5:44. Putin sighs deeply and replies with skepticism. That might work in a sermon, but not in the real world. The world is harsh, filled with enemies waiting for a weakness. Jesus slowly turns towards Putin and softly responds, "When Peter tried to defend me with violence, I rebuked him. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword." Matthew 26:52. True strength doesn't come from destruction, but from restoration. Clearly moved, Putin lowers his eyes and replies almost in a whisper, "How can I trust in that?" Jesus, with kindness and firmness in his voice, answers, "Trust is not weakness, Vladimir. It's courage. The courage to choose peace when everyone expects war." Putin remains silent, his eyes still fixed on the images slowly fading from the window, deeply contemplating these words. Putin was now deeply immersed in thought. Jesus' words echoed strongly in his mind, as vivid scenes from his past surfaced, replaying like an internal film. Difficult decisions, political battles, international conflicts, and the constant burden of responsibility weighed heavily upon his shoulders. Perceiving the silent dilemma of the Russian leader, Jesus calmly approached and sat down on a nearby chair in a gesture of closeness and comfort. With a gentle yet incisive voice, he began speaking. "You carry an enormous burden, Vladimir. I see every decision, every doubt, every silent struggle within you. But I want you to know that I didn't come here to judge or condemn. I've come to offer rest and a new path." Putin slowly raised his eyes, meeting once again that gaze filled with compassion and understanding. In a rare moment of vulnerability for a leader accustomed to hiding emotions, he murmured, "But this path, it seems impossible for someone in my position. How can I abandon everything I've built? How can I follow you and still be the leader my country needs?" Jesus stepped forward, moving closer, his expression firm yet gentle, and softly replied, "Real strength comes from recognizing your weaknesses, Vladimir. Redemption isn't for those who've never made mistakes, but for those brave enough to acknowledge their errors and try again, this time in the right way." Putin lowered his gaze again, clearly moved for the first time in a very long while. The silence seemed eternal, yet now it was filled with hope and possibilities. Finally, Putin broke the silence with an almost trembling voice. "But how do I start on this path?" Jesus smiled with affection and understanding, responding in a voice that touched the depths of the soul. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. Putin looked away once more, contemplating the words he had just heard, feeling, perhaps for the first time, the genuine possibility of a new life and a new legacy. As Putin remained deeply immersed in reflection, the figure of Jesus gradually began to dissolve into a gentle, comforting light, leaving behind only a warm, reassuring glow. The room fell into a profound silence, and Putin felt an enormous weight gradually lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in many years, he allowed himself to feel vulnerable. Slowly, he stood up and walked to the window. Looking outside, he saw Moscow illuminated, as imposing as ever, yet now seen through different eyes. He reflected deeply on his past, on the many decisions he'd made, some with pride, others with deep regret. Jesus' words directly challenged him, demanding a clear response. Putin felt as though he stood at a crossroads, facing two distinctly different paths. The Russian leader knew that accepting this invitation to transformation wouldn't be easy. It would mean abandoning beliefs and practices that had accompanied him for decades. Could he truly leave behind everything he knew and believed to embrace a faith rooted in love, compassion, and forgiveness? Would he be capable of leading with humility rather than the rigid authority that had always come naturally to him? As he pondered these difficult questions, Putin felt a slight relief in realizing that he didn't need to make this decision immediately. Nevertheless, he knew that this encounter would forever change the way he viewed power, his own life, and perhaps even his legacy before history. With his eyes still fixed on the city before him, Putin whispered softly to himself, "Perhaps it's time to try something new. Perhaps it's time to truly listen." Now, a big question remains. Would Vladimir Putin actually choose to embrace Christianity and radically change his leadership style? Would he manage to take the challenging step of putting into practice the teachings he had just heard? Would he seek peace agreements with the countries currently in conflict with Russia? And what about you? What do you think would happen if Putin decided to convert to Christianity? Would the world be ready to witness such a powerful leader undergoing such a profound change? Leave your comment below with your opinion. And if you enjoyed this reflection, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the Bible Lab channel, and turn on notifications to follow more videos like this one, filled with deep reflections, engaging stories, and messages that can transform lives. That's all for today. See you in the next video.